Well, the American economy has been steadily improving this year, but recent headlines are warning of catastrophe. This from CNBC. The U.S. labor shortage is reaching a critical point, it says. Here's the Wall Street Journal, quote, America's worker shortage. Well, it's not hard to tell what these labor shortage pieces are trying to imply. An opinion piece in the Hill newspaper makes it obvious, quote, immigration is the best solution for a shortage of workers in America. That's a crock. Big businesses want to import more workers because it lets them keep wages low, labor costs down. Without immigration, there's only one solution to a so-called labor shortage: raise wages. Do more training of Americans. Take a chance on marginal workers, disabled workers, those with a criminal record, the exact ones the left is always telling you they care about. It would be great if that happened. There are about 7 million American men in this country between 25 and 54, prime working age. They're unemployed or out of the labor force entirely. Many of them have stopped looking for work during the Great Recession. They are not counted in the unemployment numbers. And yet each one is a living disaster. The tight labor market is exactly what we could use to get all of these, or many of them, back to work. Hiring Americans, by the way, is the fastest way to reduce poverty, strengthen families, reverse the decline of men, cut crime, restore dignity to rural America, and in general make this a better country. Some businesses don't want to bother to do that. It's easier to import new workers. Tough. Stephen Camarata is Director of Research at the Center for Immigration Studies, and he joins us tonight. How offensive is it to you as an American to read with 7 million prime-age men out of the workforce that we have a labor shortage, and so we need to import more low-wage labor?
Right. Now, that's just the high school dropouts. If we look at people without a high school education, there are about 40 million people in the United States between 18 and 65 who have no education, don't have a college education, who are currently out of the workforce. They don't show up in statistics. And that's several million more than it was at the peak of the last economic expansion. There's just no evidence of a labor shortage in America.
So it's just the opposite, actually. There's a huge pool of people who are languishing without meaningful work. And businesses, rather than try and do something, or our leaders, rather than try to improve public schools, for example, just find it much easier to import a new serf class.
Look, absolutely. Look, we can look at wages as another measure, right? If labor was really in tight supply, we would expect wages to be rising. But we can look at wages for high school dropouts, people with only a high school education, or people with some college. Over the last decade, their wages are either stagnant or actually declined once you adjust for inflation. Again, no evidence of a labor shortage there. And yet we always worry about the working poor. We worry about income inequality. We worry about work not paying, people just dropping out and living on welfare. And yet now we have an opportunity to see wages rise, and yet the business community and allies in both parties are clamoring to short-circuit all that and bring in as many immigrant workers as they can.
So you wonder why socialism, which is a disaster, is suddenly so popular with young people. It's because wages are low and they can't afford to buy a house or get married. You would think the left would notice this. They were always historically on the side of workers and higher wages. They don't care.
Yeah, at this point, the idea is that they just don't want to look at this question. They say, well, look, we'll increase minimum wage, we'll have unions, we'll have income transfers, more welfare, things like that. Whatever you think of the merits of those policies, why isn't a tight labor market one of the best things we can do for the working poor, one of the best anti-poverty programs we can do? Plus, there's all the self-esteem that comes from working.
Of course.
And so it seems like in terms of making people's lives better, making wages better, drawing all these people out of the labor force back in, tight labor market is the best thing we can do. But immigration is likely going to short-circuit that if these people have their way.
10 seconds. Do you think if the majority of immigrants coming to this country voted Republican, that Democrats might renew their interest in a tight labor market?
Yeah, it's true. About 2 to 1, immigrants and their kids are voting Democratic, and maybe that does have an impact. I hope you're wrong about that.
Yeah, maybe.
But that does seem to play some role.
Not to be cynical. I've done too many segments on this. Stephen Camarata, thank you. Really interesting.
Thanks for having me.
San Francisco.